Welcome to Shane Talks 99, episode number 1. Same intro that we have for the other Shane Talks that Jason and I do together. Eventually, I might try to come up with something a little more 90s themed and have Micah write some more like 90s 8-bit music for me or something. But for now, Shane Talks 99, going to be using the same intro. So welcome to this new podcast that I'm doing for the last 2 years. I've been talking on Shane Talks about how much I love 1999. For the first, 4 or 5, 9 episodes, we 9, 19, 29, 39, we jumped back and did something related to 1999. Well, we haven't done that for a little while, so I thought, why don't I just do an entire podcast about 1999? Like, why not? It's going to be a lot shorter of a series. The main show that Jason and I do, we aim for an hour. It usually ends up being 90 minutes long, sometimes 3 hours, whatever. This one, much shorter. We're looking for like 10 to 20 minutes here because I'm literally just going to every week and sometimes twice a week, because when we get to the summer, there's going to be midweek Wednesday releases that I'm going to cover in their own episodes. So this year, I guess it's the 23rd anniversary of 1999. I'm going to every week look at the movies that were released that week because for a long time I've held to the fact that 1999 is my favorite and one of the best ever years for film and cinematography releases. So we're going to look at them, and I'm going to try to explain why these movies that came out in this year I feel are so good. Little short, brief history. I was 18 years old in January of 1999, exactly 23 years ago right now, when I got hired by Jason's older brother, Dave Mayer, at the General Cinema Clearwater in Indianapolis, Indiana. I worked there for about a year and a half, and then I made some really poor choices and got fired. So, but I did work there for essentially the entire year of 1999 and half of 2000. And during that time, I watched a lot of movies in the movie theater that I absolutely fell in love with. I was age appropriate for a lot of these movies that we're going to talk about on this podcast series. And maybe looking back, it's got some rose-colored glasses as to why I think 1999 is such a great year. It was literally one of the best years of my life. A lot of my good friends that I met working at that movie theater, I am still friends with to this day. Jason Richardson, who is on our regular podcast a lot, he was one of my managers when I was just a floor staff employee back in 99. So obviously 23 years later, he's worked with me in multiple different ways, not just movie theater, but I produced a lot of indie film with Jason in the early 2000s, and Jason Richardson was in a few of those films that we produced. So a good number of the people that I worked with at Clearwater in 99, I'm still friends with to this day. Obviously, there were some people I didn't get along with, but overall, it was the best time of my life. It was a great group of people and friends that I hung out with. We went out every Friday and Saturday night after we got off work. We would spend, hours at Perkins eating until 6 o'clock in the morning. It was just a really good, fun time in my life. So it's probably factors into why so many of these movies I hold a special place in my heart. So the first week of 1999, we had nothing released post-Christmas. January 15th was the first day we got 4 movies released in 1999. And we're only really going to talk about one of them. I'm going to breeze through the other 3 because the other 3 are pretty terrible. We had Virus, which was Jamie Lee Curtis and Stephen Baldwin. And who else was in that one? Donald Sutherland was also in that one. I was a huge Jamie Lee Curtis fan. Obviously, I grew up loving Halloween. So, I get to watch a Jamie Lee Curtis movie. It's a horror movie. It's a sci-fi horror movie. And it's complete garbage. It's crap. It has a 12% Rotten Tomatoes ranking along with a 22% audience score. That's probably generous for it. I remember it being one of the worst films I've ever sat through. It was really disappointing. Obviously, like I said, I liked Jamie Lee Curtis from Halloween and True Lies. And then we had I think I said Stephen Baldwin. It was William Baldwin, my fault. William Baldwin from Backdraft and Sliver was in this one. And it was just a complete garbage. It's crap. I have not actually ever watched it since watching it in the movie theater. And oddly, doing my research, reading up on the movie, it apparently has a new cult following now. So I'm not sure if I would ever take the time to watch it again, but I don't know. Maybe we'll see. Also released this week, January 15th of 1999, was the Val Kilmer Mira Sorvino film At First Sight. Yeah, it's a biopic and it's pretty garbage. I don't remember liking it at all. Again, another one I have not seen since the movie theater. Probably should have watched it again before I started this film series. I probably should have watched all these movies before I talk about them. Maybe I'll do that for future episodes. But, I remember seeing the movie at Clearwater. I remember not liking it at all. I've talked many times on the regular podcast about the fact that biopics are not my thing. This was probably even before I made that decision. I probably just thought that this was a really crappy garbage movie that I just didn't like. Good cast though: Steven Weber, Bruce Davison, Nathan Lane, all a part of the movie. But just like the plot itself was just kind of booty, in my opinion. Like, he doesn't have his sight, and him and his girl are getting along. He gets his sight back. They start fighting. He starts losing his sight. They fight. They break up. He tries to get back together with her before he goes completely blind again, and she pushes him away, and then she realizes that she was at fault, and it's just like, that was just way too much of an emotional roller coaster of drama that I did not care for. And didn't really enjoy the movie at all. Sits at a 32% for critics, which, okay, and a 46% for the audience score, which both of those are much higher than I would ever give them. Our third film from this weekend, January 15th, 1999, is actually a movie that I do enjoy. I like it a lot. I've seen it a couple of times since the movie theater. It is the Annette Bening and Robert Downey Jr. film called In Dreams. I remember being really dark and creepy the first time I saw it in a theater, and it was something that I hadn't really seen a movie like this before. Obviously there were movies like this around. I think just 1999, when I started working at the movie theater, I started looking at movies differently. Like before that, a lot of my favorite films growing up were stuff like Back to the Future and Jurassic Park or The Mighty Ducks or Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure or The Breakfast Club. It was a lot of stuff that was just about people or about science fiction stories where everything, good still ends up happening in the end and good conquers all, and those kind of movies. So to get something like In Dreams that is seriously just kind of like a psychological psycho crazy movie where a lot of bad stuff happens to the main characters and a lot of the good characters throughout the film, just really weird. I was on a Robert Downey Jr. high. I was a big fan of the movie Chaplin. I liked U.S. Marshals to an extent. Obviously it's nowhere near as good as The Fugitive. There was Heart and Souls that Robert Downey Jr. had done where he could see four ghosts that he had to help solve problems in their lives to be able to move on to the afterlife. So, despite Robert Downey Jr.'s, going to jail and all that kind of stuff, I dug for him, especially the fact that he was able to get the role in U.S. Marshals, was able to, start getting back into Hollywood and doing movies and stuff. So watching him in this really crazy movie, he plays a serial killer who has a psychic bond with Annette Bening's character, so she can see what he's doing and his planning of murders, and when he commits a murder, she can see it. Really an interesting kind of crazy concept, and it just really opened my eyes to what would in the future become pretty standard and regular in a lot of the other movies that I watched. Stuff like Memento comes to mind, where it's a very dark and you have bad characters doing bad things that. I just wasn't movies that the antagonist is tortured and the movie Gothica comes to mind. Just things like that. So In Dreams, I highly recommend. I think it's really good. Let's look at it. 25% for the critics, which sucks. 40% for the audience. Again, I still think that could be a lot higher. I don't think it's a 80% movie. I'd probably say it's a 66% movie. It's good, but it's not amazing or great. But personally, I liked it and enjoyed the journey that it took me down. All right, here we are. We have the fourth movie that came out January 15th, 1999. The main topic I wanted to talk about on this podcast, and that is the movie Varsity Blues. Sports movie, football movie. The trailer is iconic, in my opinion. One of the best trailers that's ever been cut together. The music in this is amazing. It had one of the hottest young casts, and a lot of these casts in Varsity Blues went on to do multiple movies in '99. So they were all kind of starting their huge peak journeys right here in the late '90s in 1999. somebody that was at the end of his career in this movie is our antagonist, and that is Bud Kilmer, who was played by the amazing Jon Voight, who obviously did huge, like crazy good movies in the 70s and whatnot. But then even in the 90s, he was still doing a lot of stuff that I really enjoyed. He had done the movie Heat. He was unfortunately Mr. Phelps in the first Mission Impossible, which, as good as the first Mission Impossible is, growing up with Mission Impossible, it was kind of a bummer for Mr. Phelps to become the bad guy. But, it is what it is. We had him in The Rainmaker, a John Grisham movie. I'm a huge John Grisham fan, or at least I was much younger in my life. I haven't read any of his books in a long time, but his first 8 to 10 books were I read them all. I liked the movie adaptations of them, had a really good time with all of that. He did Most Wanted with Keenan Ivory Wayans, which is just a guilty pleasure movie of mine. And then Enemy of the State, which we'll have another actor in here in a few minutes. But Enemy of the State with Will Smith, right after Bad Boys, starting up his huge film career. The young cast. We're starting this off with James Van Der Beek. And Van Der Beek was doing something at this point that a lot of the Dawson's Creek kids were doing, and that was trying to not be known for Dawson's Creek. In 1998, we had Disturbing Behavior with Katie Holmes. In 98, we had Pacey. Joshua Jackson went off and did Urban Legends, or Urban Legend, the first one. Can't remember what Michelle Williams was doing around the time. Oh, she did How Late H2O in 98. So yeah, they were all kind of trying to not be known as the Dawson's Creek kids. So here was James Van Der Beek getting himself into an R-rated teen, drama, comedy. I mean, it had everything, but it wasn't Dawson's Creek. It was the complete antagonist or antithesis, the opposite of Dawson's Creek. We had him playing Moxon. His previous only other movie role he'd really done was a movie called Angus. And then, like I said, he was in his second season of Dawson's Creek when this came out. Another guy, rest in peace, one of my favorite actors, one of my man crushes is Paul Walker. I'm a huge Fast and the Furious movies fan. He did a movie called Brick Mansions, which was a remake of District B13 that I'm a huge fan of. He was on Young and the Restless for like 30 or 40 some episodes before this. And then he had done a movie called Meet the Deedles, and he had a small part in Pleasantville, which I thought was a really amazing film, I believe in 98 also. Him and Tobey Maguire and Reese Witherspoon, and then he played one of the black and white characters in it and did a good job in my opinion. So very awesome to see the early career of Paul Walker right here. We had Amy Smart in this movie, who played Moxon's girlfriend. She's gone on to do a lot of like fun stuff. She has a couple of Christmas movies that I really enjoy, like Just Friends and 12 Dates of Christmas. Before this, she had her only like big movie role she had was a movie called Starship Troopers in 97, which also had an amazing cast of young actors at that time. Ron Lester played Billy Bob. Ron Lester's kind of a sad story. He has unfortunately also passed away. He spoofed his character Billy Bob in one of the Scary Movie movies, or maybe it wasn't Scary Movie. It was one of those like spoof teen. Maybe it was Not Another Teen Movie. I think it was Not Another Teen Movie. He spoofed himself playing like Billy Ray or something similar to Billy Bob. And then he lost a crap ton of weight and got like fairly like built and muscular, and apparently couldn't find any work in Hollywood at that point. He'd been typecast for his huge size, and apparently his acting abilities didn't get him much after being Billy Bob. So that's kind of sad and very disappointing that I think the huge weight loss ended up playing a part in his death, which is very sad and unfortunate. We got Scott Caan, who played Tweeter, who I love Tweeter, much like Stifler in the American Pie franchise. I was a huge fan of Tweeter, and I did a lot of stupid stuff like Tweeter did. Scott Caan, really his only huge major role before this was also in Enemy of the State with Jon Voight and Will Smith and Jason Lee and the huge cast that was in Enemy of the State. Finally, we have Ali Larter, who went on to do like Heroes, and I know she has another TV series that I can't think of the name of off the top of my head, but the only other thing that she had done that was really known at all before this movie was she was on 2 episodes of Dawson's Creek. Pacey tried to date her. She was one of their classmates. She was a cheerleader, and it was yeah, it was the beginning of season 2, I want to say. So like right around the time this was probably being filmed, those episodes were probably being filmed also. So that was Ali Larter in Varsity Blues. So, as I've said, I was age appropriate for this movie. I was 18 when it came out. It's about a bunch of high school kids doing really crazy high school stuff, parties, drinking, um, sports. I played sports in high school. I was a huge, I mean, I didn't play football, I played hockey and basketball, but, still the team camaraderie and all that kind of stuff, like that touched on me. And I just think it is one of the best sports stories that's ever been made. I think it doesn't follow a typical formula for a sports movie. A lot of sports movies have inspirational coaches who teaches their players, this is how you win. This is the right way to win. This is the right thing to do. You got movies like Coach Carter, where, Samuel L. Jackson, plays this asshole coach, but he does it in a way that teaches his kids, like, this is how you guys need to be a team, or stuff like the Herb Brooks story, Miracle on Ice stuff, Miracle, the Disney movie version of it comes to mind, where you've got a coach that is so mean to his players that they form a bond hating their coach, like, but the coach was always doing it for the right reasons. This was just a coach who cared about himself. Bud Kilmer just wants to win. He cares about his ego. He cares about the community and everything like that. So he's a very tragic antagonist for this story, because like he wants to do a right thing, which is win for the community and make his program special, but he's just doing it in a completely wrong way. You got the star quarterback that gets injured. We get to see him emotionally struggle with not being able to be out there and play, being as good as he is, trying to get a scholarship, trying to get scouts to see him. Like, we get to see his emotional turmoil that he goes through, because he didn't do anything wrong. And that also leads into the emotional turmoil that Billy Bob goes through in the movie, because Billy Bob slips and doesn't make the block, and that's why Lance gets hurt. So I feel like a lot of that stuff is a really good dynamic explanation of a team setting for sports. And again, it's all in high school. It's all young kids. It's all just like the right moment in time for me to associate with it and enjoy it. I can see like older people probably, either A, they look at it and they don't associate with it at all, or they look back and they're like, oh, that was what it was like when I was young and I was on a sports team or anything like that. Definitely probably aimed a lot more towards the male demographic. I know females who do like the movie and who know that it's a great film. But there's not really a whole lot that goes into it from a female perspective. It is definitely, the male members of the football team go to a strip club, idolizing women and sexualizing women and stuff like that. We've got Billy Bob's, classic lines of "I came here to work and I give it a 10." So very, very much probably aimed much more towards the male demographic of people who were wanting to watch this movie. We got the whipped cream bikini by Ali Larter. That's, that scene alone is probably in, the top 10 most memorable scenes of my youth. It's a very good coming of age sports movie, specifically for guys, specifically for the male brain. Teamwork, camaraderie, male bonding, sexualizing of women. Like, these are all things that, I did when I was a kid, and are very present in this movie. So that is week number 1 of 1999. And the movie that sticks out and is absolutely amazing is Varsity Blues. It's one of the best sports movies I've ever seen, and kicks off 1999 with a great week to talk about movies. We also had those other 3: In Dreams, which I liked, At First Sight, which I hated, and what was the first one? Virus, which was actually one of the absolute worst films I've ever seen, despite having a cast of people that I actually like. So there we go. That's kind of what this podcast is going to be about. I'm going to be looking at these movies that got released every week in 1999. I'm going to talk about why I think they're so good and the things that speak to me and that I enjoy about them, and why I love all these movies from 99. But here's the honest truth. Next week's episode is not going to be very good. It will probably be the worst week of 1999 that we've ever had. The worst week that 1999 ever had. It's going to be a pretty bad episode. It's two movies, and neither one of them are very good. So it's a Sharon Stone Hooker movie, and it is a British band or rock band movie. So we will pick those up next week on January 22nd. We will talk about those two films, and I will see you guys then. Thanks for listening to this short episode.